What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Ranked by James, where today we are doing, oh my god, one of the most difficult lists I've ever had to come up with in my entire life, and that is the top 10 greatest 1980s horror films. Now, the other decades, they had their difficulties, but I think more or less most of them that I've done so far, which if you haven't checked them out, go check them out. I've done the 2010s, the 2000s, and the 1990s already. But they kind of have their, classics. Scream is going to be on the 90s. Saw is going to be on the 2000s. The 1980s is basically a free-for-all. There's, a million that could have been on this list. And so many of them had to get cut. There was so many drafts of this list that didn't actually make it. So if you don't see your favorite 80s horror movie on this list, don't be shocked, because it probably was on another draft. There's just too many. So without further ado, it's time to find out which 10 are just a little bit better, a rank above all of the rest. Let's get started. So starting off at number 10 is going to be My Bloody Valentine. Now, this one gains points because it's a very interesting watch for me personally, because I actually at one point in my life lived in a small mining town in Nova Scotia. That's some fun fact about me, some James lore, if you really needed any. But yeah, so this movie has, interesting ties to my own life. I lived in a town like this, so it's very, creepy and eerie. But for me personally, when I'm watching, it's double that, because it's almost like this is where I actually once was. Plus, the miner Harry Warden is such a cool looking villain, with the gas mask and the mining getup, and some of the kills he scores. This is just one of the greatest slashers of the entire decade, and you knew that there was going to be at least a couple slashers on this list, and My Bloody Valentine is absolutely good enough to be on the top 10. At number 9 is a phenomenal movie by a phenomenal director, hence the title, Phenomena. Now, this movie might not make everybody's list, but it absolutely makes mine, because, God, I just think that this movie is amazing. It's very underrated, but just the storyline of it and how, everything unfolds, this girl who has this psychic power to communicate with bugs, and how she uses that, and how she's also targeted for that, and the things she gets herself into is just so compelling and interesting to watch. Basically, it's an American girl who attends this Swiss boarding school, and then eventually learns that she has this ability, and then uses it to try and track down a serial killer. It's sort of like Suspiria in a way, where, she learns that there's something, wrong, there's some evil and wrongdoing going on around her in this, boarding school in the middle of nowhere. It's got a beautiful score as well, done by Goblin. It's also got some vibes of, Carrie a little bit with the psychic powers. So basically, you combine two movies that are in my, I'd say, top 5 horror movies of all time, and you get Phenomena, and it's amazing, and there's no way that it was not going to make the list. At number 8, I'm going to say The Lost Boys. Now, this movie is a movie that I guess isn't really for everyone, but the people that it is for absolutely adore it, and I'm one of those people. I think that all of the characters are so interesting, whether it's, the two main brothers, or the Frog Brothers, or the vampires, or, Grandpa, or the one dude with the saxophone. All of this movie is just so much fun. It's so 80s. This is one of the most 80s feeling horror movies. And the vampires are just so cool. There's new, lore here introduced for vampires. It's not the classic, cover yourself in garlic and you're good. These vampires have different rules, and it makes them honestly stand out more and be cooler than they already are, which is... they're pretty cool. That's really the reason why this is on the list, just because this has some of the coolest characters, the most memorable lines, maybe the greatest soundtrack of the entire decade. This movie is awesome. It really is. And I know that there's some that would probably argue that this should be an honorable mention instead of on the top 10, but I'm not one of those people. I love this movie. At number 7 is Aliens. Not necessarily like the most horror of horror movies. It's definitely, got more of an action vibe to it, but still. Ellen Ripley being one of the greatest horror protagonists of all time in the first one, and then stepping her game up even more here in the second one, to where she's now fighting multiple of these psycho aliens, one of the greatest creature designs in the entire genre, and she's got to go up against multiple of these things while also trying to care for this little kid. It's directed so great to where you actually feel like this is in space, and this is in the future, and the Nostromo, or, whatever ship they're on this time, feels like a legit, futuristic alien spaceship. It's all just done so well. And then to the end, when she's fighting the alien queen, it's legit one of the greatest action horror, climax fight sequences ever. It really is. And Aliens absolutely belongs. At number 6, we've got Child's Play. This is a movie that had a very profound effect on my life. It's the movie that scared me. It's the first movie that legitimately just terrified me to my core, to where after, I just saw images of this movie, I couldn't watch horror for years, because I was like, dude, are they all this scary? And then eventually I watched Halloween, and I was like, okay, maybe they're all not that scary. But dude, Chucky is one of the most diabolical horror villains. This psycho killer who gets trapped in a doll's body and then spends the rest of his life chasing after this little kid so that he can swap bodies with the kid. Oh my god. That's some evil shit right there. And then combine that with the look of the doll, and then some of the kills in this movie. I mean, this is a movie that's inspired, YouTube channels and stuff like that 40 years after it was originally released. It's amazing. At number 5, now remember how I said in the intro, if you see a 90s list of top 10 horror movies, Scream is going to be on there. This is, that, but for the 80s, and that's Nightmare on Elm Street. It's so good. I always at first thought yeah, it's good, I think, it's not the greatest horror movie of all time, but it's good. And then I rewatched it about a year ago, and I was like, oh my god. This is, phenomenal. I don't know how I didn't see that before. Freddy Krueger is just so evil and demonic looking, and you want to talk about looks of horror villains. This guy right here might be the greatest looking horror villain of all time. Just everything about him, whether it's, the hat, or the burns, or the glove, or the sweater. Freddy Krueger is the best, and he's at his best in this movie. Part 2, he's really good as well. I really like part 2. But this one, you get that opening dream sequence with Tina, and then her death is one of the greatest moments in the entire genre's history. Nothing can be said about Nightmare on Elm Street that hasn't been said already. It's so just psychologically terrifying. It'll really mess with you with some of the stuff that it's showing and some of the stuff in the background, and it's a perfect example of an 80s psychological slasher. It's perfect. At number 4 is They Live. Now, maybe A Nightmare on Elm Street is a more classic movie than They Live, but I just love They Live just that much more, just a little bit. Roddy Piper is, as a pro wrestling fan, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and he's a really great and underrated actor, and this movie shows you exactly why. He basically plays this drifter that's coming into town. I'm pretty sure it's Los Angeles that he comes into, and he's coming across these homeless people, and there's a little kind of weird conspiracy, and it's just weird vibes going on, and you can't quite put your finger on it until he puts on the pair of sunglasses. And as soon as he does that, the movie changes like this. He looks up, and all of a sudden, all around him are these just horrifically ugly looking aliens. And, you know, the billboards have turned into like these subliminal messages like sleep and eat and get married and stuff. Like, basically the government and like our, you know, higher powers, I guess, are all these aliens that are controlling Earth and the humans, and, you know, subliminally making them do the things that they want. And Roddy Piper has to team up with this other guy named Frank, who's played by Keith David in, you know, a standard awesome performance by him, to basically go to war with all these aliens. Like, he invades all these different places and takes down the aliens. And, you know, you got that iconic scene where he walks into the bank with just a loaded gun, and he's just like,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
and then he just starts blasting and annihilating all of these aliens. It's such an awesome action, sort of political thriller, horror movie kind of thing. It's got like a lot of genres wrapped up into one, and I think there's lots of awesome like twists and turns along the way. It's a really great and really, I think, underrated and underappreciated movie that a lot more people should see. Speaking of movies that I think are underrated and underappreciated, yeah, it's this high up. Number 3 is Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch. Now, realistically, I probably could have put any of the Halloween movies from the 1980s on this list, except for, you know, that one. But yeah, you know, Halloween 2 is a really fun sequel to the original. It kind of takes what the original did and kind of dials it up a little bit. You know, there's more kill scenes and gore scenes and, you know, craziness to it. And then Halloween 4 is a really awesome, you know, return to form to the series after Halloween 3, which a lot of people didn't like, but I absolutely love it. It's my second favorite in the Halloween series if I was gonna rank them, because this movie is just so awesome with its atmosphere and its crazy story and how it's all pulled off. The direction by Tommy Lee Wallace is really great. I think it's really underrated in terms of, you know, how good it was directed with some of these shots. And the score by John Carpenter, I believe, is, you know, top notch here. This might be the best score in the entire Halloween franchise, and that's really saying something because some of these movies have some bangers in there. But Halloween 3, it's like this epic scale kind of movie that's just confined to, you know, like a slasher film runtime. And I think they really do great with the time that they have. Like, the kills are amazing, and the plan is just so wild by Cochran, you know, to take all of these Halloween masks and kill a bunch of children with them, literally planning to just wipe out the entire country. It's wild. It's one of those movies where, you know, the second you kind of really start to, you know, pick it apart, it doesn't really make too much sense with like time zones and stuff. But if you just, you know, strap in and enjoy the ride for, you know, like popcorn movies, I guess, this is the best you can get. Halloween 3, I love it. Coming in at number 2, speaking of John Carpenter, it's The Thing. I'm sure this was one that you were waiting to see because I've talked about it now multiple times, and it's also like my channel icon. It's me as the dude in that iconic poster. I guess we can start with that. The, you know, movie poster is one of the greatest horror movie posters of all time. And then you get into the actual movie and it's just so great. Like, it's so well done, you know, with the feeling of just coldness and isolation. You know, you really feel the feeling of this just isolated Antarctic base as one by one these characters slowly turn into the Thing, while at the same time you never know who actually is the Thing or not until they, you know, come out and get torched or come out and actually kill someone. It works so well at keeping you on the edge of your seat the whole time, never knowing what's going to happen next, never knowing who is the Thing, who isn't. you know, what are the rules? Like, if you are the Thing, do you even know you're the Thing? Like, you have no idea. It's just this thing that's infiltrated the base, and all hell breaks loose. But it's another one with such a great score and atmosphere and direction and just overall just vibes. It's an absolute all-time horror movie classic. It's probably the greatest movie remake ever, I guess, unless you're gonna count, like, I don't know, Scarface or something. It's definitely up there. You know, if that's a ranking video I do one day, it's gonna be on the list, I'm telling you, because it's a classic. But at number one is a movie that I can go on about literally all day, because there is so much to talk about. There's like endless material with this movie, and I'm sure you've already guessed by now that that's The Shining. It's my favorite movie of all time, not just horror, just movie in general, because it's brilliant. All of the subject material that it delves into without even telling you that it's delving into, like, there's so much here once you start peeling back the layers that it's like, oh my god. It's like, you know, I didn't even realize the first time I watched that it was talking about this the whole time, and then there's another thing the second time you watch, and then the third time, and then literally you can watch this movie over and over again and you keep getting something new out of it. It's just written and directed that well by Stanley Kubrick, who also happens to be my favorite director of all time. This movie is amazing. It's an absolute total classic. One of the greatest movies of all time, my personal favorite, and yeah, it's The Shining. It's my favorite movie of all time. I can make a whole video, I can make ranking videos about The Shining. So, yeah. Look forward to me talking about this movie more in the future, because it's that damn good. It's my favorite movie, and it's number one. So thank you for watching my list of the top 10 greatest horror movies of the 1980s. Be sure to comment your list down below, and also go ahead and check out the YouTube short that I just dropped at the same time of dropping this video that gives 5 honorable mentions that were this close to making the list, but just barely got edged out, but I still want to talk about and mention. So be sure to go check that out, and if you made it this far in the video, I thank you very much. That's awesome. And if you would like to, go ahead, you could like the video, you could subscribe if you want to. I don't know, it's up to you. But until the next one, I want to thank you very much for watching. Peace out.